Hello, Richard Foreman here with another Dodgy Reg podcast, 10th in the series as it happens. In this one, Reg meets Richard at a vehicle dumping ground somewhere in the countryside to seek out traces of the mysterious Scanty Man. Having finished a story I'd been stewing over for several weeks, I was feeling rather pleased with myself, but stiff and weary from too long at the keyboard. A walk in fresh air was required. Approaching my front door, I noticed a small brown envelope on the floor, heavily sealed in parcel tape. Scrawled upon it, in one of the few places where the paper was still exposed, were the words, Rich, F-Y-I. I opened it with some difficulty, tearing at the paper till the tape gave way, to find a note which began with an OS map reference and continued, Meet me here at 3 p.m. tomorrow. You want to know about this. The paper had a faint odour of old Holborn. I wasn't aware that I wanted to know anything from Dodgy Reg, but he obviously was. Curiosity mingled with distaste for such a venture. I had things to be doing at 3 p.m. next day, a whole list of them, even if nothing immediately came to mind. Map reference, rendezvouses. It felt uncomfortably close to the 39 steps. I wasn't having any of it, even if I was... Well, if I was sniffing around for something new to write about. So, here I am. Turns out I'm a mile or two out of town on a substantial patch of rough ground where a number of old vehicles have been abandoned and are in various stages of decay, degrees of damage or dismantlement. They are mostly farm vehicles, tractors, box vans and the like, a flatbed, trailers and towable machinery. Rust is developing on most of them, enveloping some. The whole scene is in parts overgrown with rosebay willowherb and ubiquitous nettles, but some paths are fairly well trodden through the natural and unnatural chaos here. I walk around a little, expecting to see the man who has summoned me at any moment. But there is no sign of Reg, and the sky is darkening ominously. I'm torn between a sense of fascination and a desire to get home before I get soaked in the impending rainstorm. A few more minutes then. I'll make a run for my car parked at the back on the edge of the road as soon as I feel the first raindrops. There is something eye-catching about an old abandoned truck, a twisted bonnet jammed open and tall grasses and ferns growing through the metalwork, their tops swaying in the airflow. Something engaging about deepening layers of ochreous rust and crumbling metalwork. Something mournful about other vehicles in their final stages, just chunks of what was once a proud creation, half buried, barely recognisable amongst thistles and tufts. I've no more than guesses why person or persons unknown have chosen, over decades, to leave this equipment here to undergo a kind of reclamation on the part of nature, though who knows what the inevitable leaks of oil and battery fluid are doing to the soil here. Moving on, I come across a more recently deposited van, a once white Ford Transit, which can't have been here more than a year or three. As I sidle around it to the point where I can see through the front window on the driver's side, I am momentarily startled to discover that Reg is sat inside, leaning on the steering wheel, looking more than a little shaggier than when I last set eyes on him. As he catches sight of me, he thrusts the door open. "Blimey, Rich, what took you so long?" I open my mouth to speak, but nothing emerges. "I knew you'd find me," he continues, taking no notice of my outraged expression. "You couldn't walk through a place like this without getting hooked, could you?" The comment's associated with a sly grin. I notice that at least one more tooth has gone missing. Is there any dentist Reg would trust enough to give him anaesthetic? I point at the gathering cloud cover. "Reg, it's going to be pouring down in a few minutes. What is the story? Why have you asked me to come here?" "Cards on the table, is it? Right. You've heard of the Scanty Man, haven't you?" "The what?" "You haven't? And you call yourself a writer?" "Calling oneself a writer does not confer omnipotence, Reg. I know nothing of the Scanty Man. People disappear, see, and the last person they're seen with, that's him. But the trouble is, no one can tell you exactly what he looks like. OK, he wears a grey suit, right? Most people who've seen him, they can agree on that. But his face is a blur, always a blur. Has he got hair? Is he bald? They don't know, can't tell you. And if you ask them whether he's tall or short or skinny or fat, whatever, they don't know, do they? He's like a vague approximation of a human being. A scant resemblance, you might say." "So, what's the connection with this rural dumping ground?" "Well, this may not be your idea of a good spot for a bit of courting, Rich, but youngsters, they use it like a facility. Now, Lucy Braithwaite, you remember? 2 or 3 years back before the lockdowns?" I do. 16 years of age, and she'd gone missing. Just like that, without a trace. Family and boyfriend baffled and bereft. Sad story. "They kept it hush-hush. But this is where she was last seen," says Reg, relighting a roll-up that has gone out. "Her and her boyfriend had a row, didn't they? He stomped off, then thought better of it. As he walked back along the path, he saw her talking to someone. Grey suit. That was about all he could say about the bloke. The rest was vague. When he got to the spot, just by this van it was, no sign of her or the man. Boyfriend called the fuzz on his mobile, searched the area. No good, no trace, no clues." "Hang on, Reg. Hush, hush, you say. How come you found out about—" "Mate of mine. He heard that—" I cut him off in turn, becoming impatient. "Ah, so we're in friend of a friend territory here. Foaf tale, urban legend. Come on, Reg. You dragged me out here to listen to that sort of rubbish. Get a grip." He glares at me, jumps out of the van and flicks what's left of his ciggy into the grass. "Trouble with you, Rich, is you see all the dots, but you don't join 'em together. Well, you can sod off if you like. I was going to show you the evidence, but I don't think I'll bother." "Evidence? What evidence?" "Oh, get yourself home. You don't want to get soaked." "Show me." Reg shrugs his shoulders, grumpily and silently leading the way. I follow. We walk towards the edge of the enclosure. The sense that we are being watched, my logical mind tells me, is an inevitable consequence of the preceding conversation. It's not like Reg hasn't primed me for this sort of thing before, but there it is. I keep looking around, expecting to catch a glimpse of a tall, slender figure in a grey suit and sporting a blurred, featureless face. At the perimeter, we encounter impenetrable bushes, overrun with brambles and edged with thistles, not yet in flower. Reg points at the latter. Look, down there. Seen from above, the older thistle leaves splay out, loosely symmetrical from the spiky centre where new leaves are unfurling. They create a kind of fractal spiderweb effect that engages both eye and mind. It's not the first time I've been drawn by such natural sights, so I've yet to be impressed, and I'm about to fire a query at Reg when I become aware of both blurring and a sense of movement at the centre. My concentration intensifies. I feel as though I am unable to take my eyes from what I am seeing. Without physically expanding, the plant seems to take in more and more of my visual field, excluding peripheral detail. At its centre, there is a sense of something opening, some kind of void revealing itself. It resembles the onset of a migraine attack, those first floaters of light like spots in the visual field after a glimpse of the sun. But it's dark, lightless. What follows is a sense of insubstantiality concerning my physical existence. A sense that this void I'm perceiving is more real than anything else I've experienced. That the whole of my life has been as insubstantial as a dream until this moment. This slow opening to a deeper, vaster, darker realm of existence. Then something intrudes. A fat raindrop lands on the hairless upper reaches of my head. Splat. Got you, didn't it? Says Reg with just a hint of a smirk. Borders of reality, here on this very spot. I'm feeling distinctly out of it, but a few more raindrops and more mundane worries begin to intervene. Better get back to the car. Right, room for a passenger, Rich? Evidence? Driving home in a rainstorm, my concentration on visibility and vehicle control in the heavy downpour that followed our exit, while Reg rambled on about portals, interdimensional travellers and such. The sense that I had been shown something incontrovertible soon began to fade. That I'd had an odd and momentarily disconcerting experience I couldn't deny. That it had anything to do with blur-faced men in suits or people going missing was a step beyond. I dropped off Reg outside his flat, and I think he could see he'd lost me. His parting words just a subdued, "See you around, Rich." Back home I've Googled the Scanty Man and Lucy Braithwaite. The former, it turns out, is a fiction that has crept into enough consciousnesses to promote it to urban legend status. While Lucy Braithwaite did indeed go missing and has not been found to this day, there is no mention of the vehicle dump or a boyfriend who saw her with an unidentified man in grey. Of course, some such stories do get suppressed, and some of the channels through which Reg gets his information just might be well informed. This time, however, I think he's fallen for a fancified tale. Except Googling on to the more obscure pages that turn up after the first few, I come across a studious piece that catalogues the kinds of locations where the Scanty Man is alleged to have made appearances. Almost exclusively, they are isolated urban or rural dumping grounds, places where the products of technology have been left as midden for nature to reclaim. The writer suggests that they are liminal places, borderline, transitional. He agrees that the majority of such stories are hokum, but in some rare cases, the creatures that dwell in our collective unconsciousness might just be enabled to emerge. As a writer whose stories often touch on the supernatural edges that surround us, this is pure grist for my mill. I've already decided that another look at those thistles is definitely on my to-do list. But by now, I'm really not so sure about the guy in grey. There's something tacky about this kind of internet meme. Surely the content of our collective unconscious contains far greater riches. So, that's me done with the Scanty Man. I'll leave it to Reg to go further. Look out for the next Dodgy Reg podcast, in which we discover that Reg's former girlfriend Cassiopeia remains a part of his life. Reg is, he considers, monitoring her. The story's called That's How They Get You.